Fox News alert as we await President Trump's departure from the White House this hour for Arizona. He'll be visiting a U.S. Border Patrol office in Yuma as the issue of immigration heats up ahead of the 2020 election. The president may be speaking to reporters on the ground on his way out. If he does, we will bring those remarks to you. This coming after a night of chaos in our nation's capital.
From the crowd.
Protesters there fighting with police as they try to create a so-called Black House Autonomous Zone. That is outside of the White House. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith. Hey, Ed.
And very pleasant good morning to you, Sandra. I'm Ed Henry. Hundreds of demonstrators gathered in Lafayette Park where they tried to topple a statue of Andrew Jackson before police stepped in, used pepper spray to disperse the crowd. Protesters also targeting that historic St. John's Episcopal Church once again, spray painting BHAZ on its columns in an attempt to imitate Seattle's controversial chop zone. Meanwhile, President Trump says he plans on issuing an executive order to make cities guard their monuments amid these ongoing demonstrations.
I don't like it at all. I don't like anything that's going on. Now, federal, I've stopped. I've stopped federal. But the states are, a lot of states are weak. A lot of people are weak, and they're allowing it to happen. Hey, it's going over a little bit around the world now. They want to remove the statue of Gandhi. Okay? All he wanted was peace. They want to take down Ulysses S. Grant. Well, he's the one that stopped the Confederates, right? So, you know, he was a great general. He turned, nobody's stock went higher than his stock over the last 10 or 15 years.
Jillian Turner joins us live from Lafayette Park as we figure all this out this morning. Good morning, Jillian.
Good morning, Ed and Sandra. I am standing just north of the White House. You can see that is Lafayette Park right behind me. That is the infamous statue of Andrew Jackson that was defaced overnight. You can see in all capital letters the word killer has been spray painted on the statue. Protesters did try and topple it late last night, but were thwarted by police officers. It was a long night of civil unrest here at the White House, and President Trump so far is not happy with what is going down right on his own doorstep. Take a listen.
It's a disgrace. Most of these people don't even know what they're taking down. We're going to do an executive order, and we're going to make the cities guard their monuments. This is a disgrace.
In a tweet this morning, he doubled down and got more specific, writing, "I've authorized the federal government to arrest anyone who vandalizes or destroys any monument, statue, or other such federal property in the U.S. with up to 10 years in prison for the Veterans Memorial Preservation Act." Now, the president also said this order is retroactive, meaning it can apply to Americans who participated in protests and rallies and any kind of looting or vandalism during the protests that have swept the nation in recent weeks. Last night, just across the street from where I'm standing now at St. John's Church, more vandalism. Protesters attempting to claim a new Black House Autonomous Zone, BHAZ, spray painted across the church's columns. The Secretary of the Interior visited this area last night. Reportedly, he left disgusted by the vandalism, writing, "I just left Lafayette Square where another so-called peaceful protest led to destruction tonight. Let me be clear. We will not bow to anarchists. Law and order will prevail and justice will be served." All eyes in the nation's capital are now on the mayor, Muriel Bowser. Remember, this area that protesters managed to briefly capture and rechristen BHAZ last night is the very same area, Ed and Sandra, that she christened Black Lives Matter Plaza just about 10 days ago. So that area now being contested.
Yeah,
Ed and Sandra.
Stay on top of it. Jillian Turner, thank you. Sandra?
Okay, thank you, Jillian. Thank you, Ed. For more on all this, let's bring in Katie Pavlich. She is editor for townhall.com and a Fox News contributor. Katie, good morning to you. I want to throw up on the screen a tweet from the president just moments ago on all of this. He says this: "There will never be an autonomous zone in Washington, D.C." He writes, "As long as I'm your president, if they try, they will be met with serious force." So, Katie, we wait for continued reaction from the president. We could hear from him just a moment from now as he departs the White House. But dig into what we saw in Washington last night.
Well, first of all, I think it's important to point out that Washington, D.C. is not just some liberal city in a different state. It is the capital of the United States of America. It belongs to all Americans, and they have the right to visit this city without fear of being caught up in one of these violent riots and protests. Last night, you saw, again, these violent agitators coming in just across the street from the White House, trying to set up their own, quote, autonomous zone, taunting police, and trying to take down that statue of Andrew Jackson. Now, the police seem to have acted swiftly in preventing them from doing that, but throughout the night they continued their violence, as we've been noting this morning during the beginning of the show. They vandalized the church, which was lit on fire about a month ago. Earlier this month, President Trump sent the National Guard back after unrest in the city was quelled, but at this point it seems like he may need to bring them back. And as you've seen this morning, he is calling on these folks to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And based on what the Department of Justice has been doing over the course of the past 4 weeks, handing down indictments, initiating a number of arrests for rioters in cities like Philadelphia and elsewhere, you should believe that those laws will be enforced for unlawfully tearing down federal statues on federal property.
You're looking at so much different video that came out of last night's protests and out of that new autonomous zone as it springs up there in Washington, D.C. Katie, our own Brian Kilmeade sat down with the president and talked to him about, obviously, what you just mentioned, the attempt to topple the Andrew Jackson statue in D.C. But in the wake of these protests, so many of our historical statues coming down in this country. He asked the president how we can move forward but still remember our history. Here's the president.
You have to understand history, and you have to understand the culture and so many other aspects of our country. And people can study that and they can hate it, and let's all hate it. But you can't take down George Washington's statue, and half of our country is named after Washington. You can't. We have to remember the heritage, the culture of our country. And, you know, this is less important, but it's very important. Some of the things that they're trying to destroy are magnificent pieces of art.
The Wall Street Journal editorial board also takes this on in a new piece this morning, Katie, writing Teddy Roosevelt gets canceled. It writes this current anti-monument wave degrades what originated as a legitimate grievance, the presence of Confederate monuments. But that idea has been taken over now by what has turned into a mob intent on willy-nilly eradication of chunks of American history. Katie.
Yeah, this has gone, the argument has been made that this was about racial equality, but this has been hijacked and gone far beyond that and turned into an anti-American mob that is insistent on erasing parts of American history that are good. You don't protest and vandalize the Lincoln Memorial where Martin Luther King Jr. gave his I Have a Dream speech if you're interested in racial equality. You don't tear down the Teddy Roosevelt monument in New York City, who was the man who first invited the first black man to the White House to dine with him, Booker T. Washington, who went on to be his close advisor. In fact, Booker T. Washington was one of the first people that Teddy Roosevelt contacted when he was elected to have him dine with him at the White House with his wife and daughter. You don't tear down the statue or go after those who fought for the Union against the Confederacy for the future of a better country and away from slavery. And so this is a movement that is very well organized. I think Tucker Carlson put it well last night when he says it's a political movement that is very well funded and organized and has goals of not just not equality or moving forward as a country, but rather tearing down our country from the inside out. And you saw this at the beginning of these riots about a month ago when you saw this violence start, and you're seeing it increasingly now as these autonomous zones keep popping up. And I know that there might be some controversy over the president saying that these people will be met with force. Well, as we've seen in places like Seattle, these autonomous zones have become very violent, and their victims are black victims. So again, this is not about equality. This is about destroying American history, whether it's the good parts or the bad, and erasing it so people don't understand it.
Well, it looks like Seattle's chop zone may be coming to an end. If you look at the recent comments from the mayor of that city, who had suggested we could see a summer of love, but now 3 shootings in that zone, one of them deadly. We're going to continue to follow all of it that is happening across the country. Katie, thank you. Great to talk to you this morning.
Thanks, Deborah.
Fox News alert now. The president will head to Arizona this hour where he will meet with Border Patrol agents and deliver remarks on border security. He's also set to tour the 200th mile of brand new border wall construction in Yuma. It comes one day after the president signed an executive order to suspend certain work visas through the end of the year, which he's taking heat for from some business groups. Kristen Fisher is live at the White House with details. Good morning, Kristen.
Good morning, Ed. President Trump should be leaving the White House any minute now. You can hear Marine One over on the South Lawn, and this is a big day for him. I mean, President Trump is heading to a battleground state to mark the partial fulfillment of one of his signature campaign promises from 2016, and this recent push to put immigration back on the front burner. He's really hoping that this is going to help him win in 2020. Here's the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf on Fox earlier this morning.
The president's going down to commemorate the 200th mile that's been constructed. And as you indicated, we're going to see about 450 miles by the end of this calendar year. So it's a great accomplishment. It's a commitment that the president made to the American people to protect our southwest border.
After the president finishes touring the new section of border wall, he'll be headed to Phoenix to speak at the Students for Trump convention. Thousands of young people are going to be packed inside a church in a state where coronavirus cases are surging, so much so that the city's mayor has implemented a mandatory mask policy. Mayor Kate Gallego, a Democrat, is now slamming the event by saying it does not abide by current CDC guidelines during COVID-19. She was on to say, quote, "While I do not believe an event of this magnitude can be held safely, particularly as Arizona sees rising COVID cases, the president has decided to continue with this rally." And she's also asking President Trump to wear a mask. Unlikely that he will do that, but organizers for Students for Trump say that everybody else that attends the event inside the church will comply with the city's new mask policy. And of course, this comes just one day after we learned that 2 more staffers with the Trump campaign have tested positive for COVID-19. The campaign says they were at that rally in Tulsa on Saturday, but that they were wearing a mask. Ed?
All right, we'll watch that. We'll watch to see if the president stops to talk to Kristen and the rest of the press corps in a few moments. We'll go there live. Kristen Fisher, thank you. Sandra.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Fox News alert. What a sight this was. NASCAR stars standing in solidarity with Bubba Wallace over racism after a noose was left in the African-American driver's garage stall over the weekend. How fellow drivers showed support for him. Plus, days after the firing of Jeffrey Berman, the federal prosecutor investigating President Trump's associates, House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler says he is preparing to subpoena Attorney General Bill Barr. We'll have the details on that next.
Well, that's all up to the Attorney General. Attorney General Barr is working on that. That's his department, not my department. But we have a very capable Attorney General, so that's really up to him. I'm not involved.
A final farewell to Rayshard Brooks. The 27-year-old husband and father will be laid to rest today following a private funeral this afternoon at Atlanta's historic Ebenezer Baptist Church, where the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his first sermon. It follows a public viewing held yesterday. Brooks' death at the hands of an Atlanta police officer earlier this month became the latest turning point in a national movement against police brutality and racism.
We have begun the process to issue that subpoena. We have other remedies too to try to force the Attorney General. We can eliminate his office budget. There are a number of things we can do, which we will do.
The House Judiciary Chairman right there, Jerry Nadler, confirming overnight he will subpoena Attorney General William Barr for testimony early next month after the abrupt removal over the weekend of Jeffrey Berman, the top prosecutor for the Southern District of New York. Tom Dupree joins us now, a former Deputy Assistant Attorney General under President George W. Bush. Tom, good morning.
Good morning, Ed.
First of all, do you think Bill Barr cares? Because the Democrats it seems to me, have been trying to impeach him from day one.
Well, I think he cares about the proper functioning of the Justice Department. I don't think he particularly cares about what the Democrats on the bill say. It's a bit surprising to me that the Democrats are taking this aggressive posture. I think they have to know that by subpoenaing the Attorney General, they're inviting a fight, possibly one that ultimately will get elevated to a federal court.
And on your point, Jim Jordan, obviously the top Republican on Nadler's panel, had this to say: the Attorney General had already previously agreed to appear voluntarily back in March before you canceled the hearing, Mr. Chairman, due to the coronavirus pandemic. Attorney General Barr remains willing to testify voluntarily once the pandemic concludes. Accordingly, there's no legitimate basis for you to compel his testimony at this time. So I understand Jim Jordan's point, which is Bill Barr has already said, I'm going to come up there. It's because of the pandemic that he has it. But on the other hand, have facts on the ground changed that would compel Bill Barr to come up earlier?
Well, I think the stakes have increased by a lot. Obviously, when the Attorney General originally agreed to appear, none of this was on the radar screen. But I think in the events of the last few days, the late-night firing of the U.S. Attorney, the questions swirling around why the Attorney General wanted to make a personnel change at this time, I think raised a lot of questions. And so whereas the Attorney General might have been willing to appear voluntarily a month or two ago, I think the world has changed significantly since that time.
The world may have changed significantly as well since the confirmation hearings for Bill Barr. When you go back to 2019, he made a promise about not firing U.S. attorneys who were overseeing important investigations. Let's play that and give you a chance to watch and react.
You referred earlier to the possibility of firing a United States attorney. Would you allow the president to fire a United States attorney and thereby stop an investigation?
I would not stand by and allow a U.S. attorney to be fired for the purpose of stopping an investigation, but the president can fire a U.S. attorney. They're a presidential appointment.
So did the Attorney General break his word, or did he have some wiggle room there by saying a U.S. attorney shouldn't be fired for the purpose of stopping an investigation, and maybe he can claim now there were other factors?
Right. I think he was definitely trying to create some wiggle room there. There might be a mix of factors that led to the removal of a particular U.S. attorney. But look, I mean, I don't think the administration could be happy with the way that all of this went down, because it's given the Democrats a lot of ammunition to suggest that this was, in fact, an attempt to quash ongoing investigations. It's possible that the Attorney General would look to a chance to come and tell about in public, chance to testify in Congress as to exactly what he was thinking and why he made the decision that he did. But again, the way that they did this in the dead of night, I think it's a lot of questions that the Democrats are now going to be beating the drum about in the weeks to come.
And as part of that Friday night into Saturday drama, Bill Barr's original intention as Attorney General was to bring in, he was saying that the president was going to nominate the current SEC chairman to become the U.S. attorney. The Democratic senators here in New York have already said they're not on board with that. And guess what? Lindsey Graham, normally a big supporter of Bill Barr and the president, is saying he's going to give the Democrats their say in this, saying as to processing U.S. attorney nominations, it has always been the policy of the Judiciary Committee to receive blue slips from the home state senators before proceeding to the nomination. As chairman, I have honored that policy and will continue to do so. So final thoughts. It seems like even Lindsey Graham is closing the possibility of the president getting his pick here. Your thoughts?
Well, and that's the irony of all of this, Ed, is that the administration has taken a political hit for the way that this played out. And at the end of the day, they're not even getting their preferred candidate into the job. As you point out, it looks as though Berman's deputy is now going to take over. Senator Graham has said he'll defer to the New York senators as far as who the replacement is. And so it seems as though the administration has needlessly absorbed a political hit in hopes to make this personnel change.
All right. Definitely. We're going to see where all the pending investigations that the U.S. Attorney was overseeing, where they're all headed before the election as well. Tom Dupree, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Ed.
Sandra.
Okay, thank you. Markets reacting to comments out of the Trump administration about the status of ongoing trade deals with China. For a look at what caused the roller coaster ride on Wall Street overnight, Fox Business anchor Maria Bartiromo will join us for the opening bell this morning. Plus, President Trump warning that mail-in ballots will be fertile ground for election fraud. We will have a live report on that coming up.
I think it's going to be the greatest fraud ever. I think it's going to be a rigged election if they do that, if they're allowed to do it. We went through World War I and World War II. People went out and voted.
Fox News alert. We teed it up a couple moments ago. The president, in fact, has just stopped to talk to reporters on the South Lawn as he heads to Marine One. Remember, he is going to be going to Arizona to inspect some of the border wall construction, celebrating a key campaign promise he made about building the wall along our southern border. He's now reaching at least 200 miles of new wall. He'll be in Yuma. He'll be meeting with the Border Patrol. He's doing a roundtable. He's also going to be talking to some young people after that. So the president, in the meantime, is talking to reporters. We're going to turn that tape in a few moments and bring it to you right after this.
Fox News alert now from Wall Street. Take a look. We are awaiting the opening bell 2 minutes from now. Stocks looking to recover after a wild night last night. If you were watching, Dow futures tumbled last night on worries over the future of the China trade deal. There was a sell-off in response to an interview that was done on the Fox News channel with our own Martha McCallum and Peter Navarro, the president's trade advisor. Here's that moment on the story last night.
Do you think that the president he obviously really wanted to hang on to this trade deal as much as possible, and he wanted them to make good on the promises because there had been progress made on that trade deal. But given everything that's happened and all the things you just listed, is that over?
It's over, yes. They came here on January 15th to sign that trade deal, and that was a full 2 months after they knew the virus was out and about. It was just minutes after Wheels Up, when that plane took off, that we began to hear about this pandemic.
Okay, so that was last night. Navarro then tried to clarify those comments. He says that they were taken out of context. So as we await the opening bell this morning, let's bring in Maria Bartiromo, anchor of Mornings with Maria on the Fox Business Network Sunday Morning Futures and the Fox News Channel. Maria, I know you watch the markets in the evening just like I do, see how things are going. That interview happened in the 7 p.m. Eastern Time hour last night, certainly moved markets. Peter Navarro, in a statement quickly thereafter, said, "My comments have been wildly taken out of context. They had nothing to do with the Phase 1 trade deal, which continues in place." But Maria, that's why we played Martha's entire question and his answer with it, because it's hard to see how they were taken out of context. What did you make of it?
Well, look, Sandra, I think that we are in an economic war, a Cold War with China. I don't think there's any question about it. And frankly, if you ask me, I think it is over. Peter Navarro obviously walked the statement back, but we still have not seen the Chinese Communist Party live up to its agreement that they're going to buy $250 billion of commodities, etc. So yes, this market is opening higher, up 200 points right now because of the walking back of that statement and the president's tweet saying, yes, the Phase 1 deal is very much in place, but we are waiting to see the Chinese Communist Party keep its promises. I don't have much hope in that. So I would actually stick my neck out and say, yeah, it's over. They're already overreaching and breaking promises in Hong Kong, going back from the autonomous conclusion to now saying, well, we want to overreach in Hong Kong. They've militarized the South China Sea, another broken promise. And, of course, they invaded India. So I think they're using this COVID-19 pandemic to gain territory. We'll see if they actually do buy that $250 billion in promises to the United States in the middle of all of this.
All right, so markets recovering this morning, Tuesday morning, minute into trading, the Dow's up 243 points. I want to read the second part of Peter Navarro's statement because it's important to your point, Maria. I was simply speaking, he said, to the lack of trust we now have of the Chinese Communist Party after they lied about the origins, he said, of the China virus, as he calls it, and foisted a pandemic upon the world. You also had, immediately after that interview took place, Jonathan Swan over at Axios. He got on the phone, called Larry Kudlow, the president's chief economic advisor. He tweeted out, just got off the phone with President Trump's top economic advisor, Larry Kudlow. He said it's totally false that China trade talks are off. The president tweeted, seeing the need to clarify those remarks because it was moving markets. The president tweeted this on the deal. The China trade deal is fully intact, he said. Hopefully they will continue to live up to the terms of the agreement. If anything that you can take away from this, Maria, it shows you just how fragile this deal may be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a reach to say it's totally false. Totally false, really? I mean, at this point, we are seeing a massive pushback of the Chinese behavior. I spoke with the Attorney General over the weekend, and the AG said that the Chinese Communist Party is stealing intellectual property as we speak. They want to be the #1 technologically important country in the world, and they're stealing to do it. They're stealing not only data about the military, but about agriculture, about retail, about medicine. They're trying to come up with a COVID-19 COVID-19 vaccine before the United States. So there is certainly an economic Cold War underway right now between the U.S. and China. And this president has been really the first to actually push back on China's behavior. They've been stealing IP from us for decades. They're also sending in researchers on a regular basis, and you've seen a number of researchers indicted. The president or the chairman of the chemistry department in Harvard, Charles Lieber, was arrested because he was accepting money from the CCP while also being on a grant of the U.S. working at Harvard. So this is not changing anytime soon. This is going to continue. We continue to see pushback until the Chinese Communist government starts living up to their promises, and I just don't see that happening, Sandra. So what he told Martha last night maybe was a slip of the tongue, but there was some truth to it. Come on.
We could be hearing more from the president on that any moment now. He just stopped to talk to reporters on his way to Arizona. We're going to have that sound for everybody. As soon as we do, we'll play it for you. Lastly, the president's executive order on restricting worker visas is expected to free up more than 500,000 jobs for workers that are already in the country. Maria, just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Lindsey Graham says he doesn't support it. Ultimately, he says it's going to be bad for the economy. Final thoughts, Maria?
Well, look, the technology companies are against this as well because they want a diversified workforce. But at the end of the day, it's very difficult to discern who is here from the Chinese Communist Party trying to steal information and who is here actually in an honest way to try to work in our companies and build businesses here. I think there's also a China element to this. Look, 45 million people have already filed for unemployment benefits. There's a certain limited amount of jobs, and the president is going to have to salvage some of this economy going into the election, given the fact that we had a great economy before the pandemic, and now we're talking about a recession that we're currently in with a massive contraction in the second quarter. We will see growth in the third and fourth quarter, but right now he's got to preserve as many jobs as he wants. I think that's what this is about.
Okay, and we're told the president just wrapped his remarks. He's talking about testing, Tulsa, what happened in Washington, D.C. last night. We will have those remarks for everybody as soon as we do that. We'll play them. Maria, great to see you this morning. Thank you so much for that.
Thanks, Sandra.
Meantime, the president taking aim again at mail-in voting, claiming millions of ballots will be printed by foreign nations and sent to voters to try and disrupt the 2020 presidential election. But critics say that is not possible. Our senior correspondent Eric Shawn is live at the Suffolk County Board of Elections in New York, where it's presidential primary election day. In fact, Eric, good morning.
That it is. Good morning, Ed. Well, the president is warning that a foreign government could try to steal the election by printing false absentee and mail-in ballots. But, you know, local officials here in the election board and others across the country say there are safeguards to try and prevent that. This is what the president tweeted yesterday, saying, quote, rigged 2020 election, millions of mail-in ballots will be printed by foreign countries and others. It will be the scandal of our times. This month, the administration has been warning about potential problems with mail-in ballots.
Right now, a foreign country could print up tens of thousands of counterfeit ballots and be very hard for us to detect which was the right and which was the wrong ballot. So I think it can upset and undercut the confidence in the integrity of our elections.
But election officials and experts cannot point to one case of a foreign government actually doing this. They say mail-in and absentee ballots have numerous protections, such as they're printed on special paper, have barcodes that track them, and a voter's signature has to match what's in the elections office on file. The Biden campaign accused the president of, quote, pushing baseless conspiracy theories meant to discredit vote by mail. It is a well-worn page from his playbook of deception and distraction. We will not stand by while Donald Trump recklessly undermines faith in our democratic process. Michael Waldman, the president of the Brennan Center for Justice, says the claim is false and just simply ridiculous.
This sounds like something out of Get Smart rather than an actual spy story. The idea that some foreign government could print millions of ballots and sneak them into the country with maybe invisible ink to cast people's votes for them is absurd.
Well, here at the Suffolk County Board of Elections, Republican Commissioner Nick LaLota tells me that it is theoretically possible to forge a mail-in ballot. Officials, though, clearly on this primary day on guard to protect the system to make sure there aren't any problems on this election. Ed, back to you.
All right, we'll stay on top of it. Eric Shaw, thank you. Sandra?
All right, an emotional and moving show of solidarity yesterday at Alabama's Talladega Superspeedway. NASCAR drivers and crew members joining Bubba Wallace in a march down pit road, pushing his number 43 car to the front of the line ahead of the race. The gesture coming just one day after a noose was found in his garage stall. Wallace, who is NASCAR's only black full-time driver, says the incident will not slow him down.
I'm proud to stand where I'm at and carry a new face. Look at this. First times right here from Atlanta. That is so cool. The sport is changing. The deal that happened yesterday, sorry I'm not wearing my mask, but I wanted to show whoever it was that you're not going to take away my smile, and I'm going to keep on going.
Very emotional moment for Wallace and NASCAR fans. The FBI and the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division have now joined that investigation. NASCAR's president says those responsible will be banned from the sport for life.
Fox News Alert now. The president just wrapping up with reporters at the White House. Among other things, he discussed those protests last night in Washington and the attempts to topple a statue of Andrew Jackson. The president's remarks are taped playback. We're going to have it for you as soon as we have it, just in the next couple of moments. Plus, Dr. Anthony Fauci heading back to Capitol Hill for a House hearing on the Trump administration's response to coronavirus as some states report an uptick in new cases. Congressman Michael Burgess will join us next to talk about today's hearing and the COVID-19 surge in his home state of Texas.
We have strategies to reduce the spread of COVID-19 without having to return to stay-at-home policies. Closing down Texas again will always be the last option.
Okay, as we mentioned, President Trump departing the White House right now. He is heading for Arizona. The president's going to be meeting with Border Patrol agents there later today, and he plans to visit the 200th mile of the new border wall in Yuma. He'll also be delivering remarks at the Students for Trump convention in Phoenix. So he was departing a short time ago. He stopped, spoke to reporters for about 6 minutes. Of course, he was first asked about last night in Washington, D.C. He said, "We stopped the attack on Andrew Jackson in Lafayette Park." He said he wanted to thank the police. Numerous people are in jail or will go to jail, promised the president. They are looking at long-term sentences. So he spoke extensively on that. He also talked about the rally in Tulsa over the weekend. He's also talking about coronavirus testing. So the president hitting on a wide range of issues as he departed for Arizona a few moments ago. Let's listen to the president together.
So we're going to Arizona. We're celebrating. We have over 200 miles of wall built. It's been incredible. Our numbers on the border, as you know, are at just about a record-breaking low. People are not being able to cross the border. The wall has helped because we have more than 200. We have about 212 miles up of wall. So that's good. And we're going to be doing a number of other things. We're going to be making a speech to young people in Arizona. And we'll be meeting with some of the Arizona officials to talk about their border and how strong it's become. It's become very strong. Last night we stopped an attack on a great monument, the monument of Andrew Jackson in Lafayette Park. And I just want to thank law enforcement. They did a great job. We were working very closely with the White House Secret Service and some of our executives. It was really, they did a great job. They stopped it cold. Numerous people are in jail and going to jail today. People are already there, but we're looking at long-term sentences under the Act. We have a very specific Monuments Act, and we are looking at long-term jail sentences for these vandals and these hoodlums and these anarchists and agitators, and call them whatever you want. Some people don't like that language, but that's what they are. They're bad people. They don't love our country, and they're not taking down our monuments. I just want to make that clear. And other than that, go ahead.
Mr. President, do you have an executive order regarding the monument? What will it accomplish?
I will have an executive order very shortly, and all it's really going to do is reinforce what's already there, but in a more uniform way. Okay? I want to also say this. If the state governments, because you see them all over in Seattle, they're very weak. And in Minnesota, They might need help. If they need help, the federal government is willing to help them. If these hoodlums come around, these are not protesters, by the way. These are anarchists and other things. If these hoodlums come around, and if the states can't handle it, we are ready, willing, and able to help, as we did in Minnesota, where we stopped after 4 days. They finally called, and we did a great job with the National Guard.
Mr. President, when you said you were changes at your campaign after the Oklahoma rally?
Yeah, Hogan Gidley, not for that reason, because as you probably have heard, Fox had the highest ratings on a Saturday night in the history of Fox. So that's the ultimate poll, I guess. But the ratings on Saturday night for Fox were the highest ratings in the history of Fox News, which is, I guess, a long history. So that was the #1 Saturday night in history. We actually had a nice crowd, and despite all of the warnings and everything else that other networks were trying to do, despite the fact that we had some pretty bad people waiting there, they shouldn't have been, maybe some of the same people I just talked about. We had a nice crowd, but we had the highest ratings in the history of Fox on Saturday night. And online, I heard the record was unbelievable. I heard the numbers were unbelievable. I think you probably know that. What were the numbers online? Do you know?
I don't know, sir.
Well, you should know, because you should report it.
Mr. President, at that rally, when you said you asked your people to slow down testing, were you just kidding, or do you have a plan to slow down testing?
I don't kid. Let me just tell you. Let me make it clear. We have got the greatest testing program anywhere in the world. We test better than anybody in the world. Our tests are the best in the world, and we have the most of them. By having more tests, we find more cases. We did 25 million tests. Think of that, 25 million. If you look at other countries, they did 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, big countries. We did 25 million, way more by double, triple, quadruple any other country. Therefore, we test, we're going to have more cases. By having more cases, it sounds bad, but actually what it is we're finding people. Many of those people aren't sick or very little. You know, they may be young people. But what's happened is, because of all of the cases that we find, we have a very low mortality rate, just about the best in the world. So that's the advantage to the testing, along with other things. But just remember this. The reason we have more cases than other countries is because our testing is so much. Other countries do very little testing by comparison. So we're going to do this year, right now, up till yesterday, I think they told me, we're over 25 million tests. Other countries are at 2 million, 3 million. Here's what I say. Testing is a double-edged sword. In one way, it tells you you have cases. In another way, you find out where the cases are, and you do a good job. We are doing a great job. We have never been credited for it. We're doing the best testing job anywhere in the world. We're doing the best ventilator job anywhere in the world. We're now supplying ventilators to the entire world. Nobody else has done that. Nobody else. Countries don't have ventilators. They call the United States. We've done a great job. We have not been given credit for it. The other thing, the Tulsa rally was incredible. Despite all of the horrible, ominous warnings that you people put out over a period of 2 weeks, the crowd was wonderful. They were warriors. It was a great crowd. But many of them stayed home and watched television. And what happened is Fox on Saturday night had the biggest rating in the history of Fox television. Thank you very much, everybody.
All right, that was President Trump departing the White House a short time ago. He has since landed at Joint Base Andrews, gotten on Air Force One and taken off. He's heading down to Yuma, celebrating the 200th mile of the border wall down there in Arizona. He hit a wide range of issues there. He talked about the people vandalizing in Washington, D.C. last night, trying to topple the Andrew Jackson statue. He called them anarchists. He said if states can't handle it, we are willing and able to step in and help. He talked about the rally in Tulsa over the weekend. He also talked about the latest with coronavirus, talking about more confirmed cases in the United States, the result of more testing. He said by having more cases, it sounds bad, but many of those are young people. He went on to say we have a very low mortality rate, just about the best in the world. So the president is now on his way to Arizona. We'll have continued coverage of his trip to Yuma as the day goes on.
All right. In the meantime, as you heard the president there talking about COVID-19 at the end, Congressman Michael Burgess sits on the House Energy and Commerce Committee, which is holding a big hearing later this morning. We're going to dip in there. Congressman, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
What's your immediate reaction to what the president had to say about this whole issue of testing?
Well, I think he's correct. The volume of tests has markedly increased, as you know, over the last 4 or 5 months. So that's a good thing, I think. You need to know where the illness is if you're going to be able to satisfactorily counter it. In Texas, for example, the governor has determined that we're going to test every resident of every nursing home, all the staff at the nursing homes, and I think that's a good thing. Obviously, you are going to find more cases as you do that, but as we know, those congregate living facilities pose a special risk for people with multiple risk factors.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll get back to the hearing on Capitol Hill where you are, but since you mentioned your home state of Texas, here's your governor talking about what has been a rise in cases in your home state. Give you a chance to react on the other side. Here's the governor.
To state the obvious, COVID-19 is now spreading at an unacceptable rate in Texas, and it must be corralled. Not taking action to slow the spread will cause COVID to spread even worse, risking people's lives and ultimately leading to the closure of more businesses.
So was it a mistake then for the governor and other state officials to move so quickly to reopen?
No, I don't think so. And look, as you begin to increase the mobility of people, we all knew cases were going to increase. And I think the governor is exactly correct. You want to be able to counter any hot spots, any clustering of increases. You want to be able to counter that with the appropriate either medical countermeasures. Testing is one of the rationales to employ there. But also, look, Texas is a big state, and it's different in different parts of the state. I've had a conversation with a doctor down in the lower Rio Grande Valley just before the weekend, and the community spread in that community has increased. Well, I think that is something to which you need to pay significant attention, do what is required to reduce community spread, so that will be what we've known for some time, hand washing, masks, social distancing, and all of that is going to be important in those communities. And what you don't want to see is the congregate living facilities subsequently be badly affected because of the increased community spread in those neighborhoods.
You said something else important a moment ago when you mentioned that a key factor here is that in Texas you're trying to protect senior citizens, nursing homes, something that wasn't frankly done enough in states like New York here. The governor, Andrew Cuomo, is facing criticism for that. He was pressed about it yesterday. I want you to react to this as well. Watch.
Do you take responsibility for that order and the role it may have played in those deaths?
Yeah, the Republicans definitely are playing politics how handling this COVID virus. Yes, I understand that. Yes, we had more people die in nursing homes than anywhere else because we had more people die. Because the federal government missed the boat and never told us that this virus was coming from Europe and not from China.
As you know, basically sent senior citizens back into these nursing homes, and now he's deflecting and saying it's the federal government's fault, it's it's Republicans' fault. Your reaction?
Well, look, so much of this is unfortunate on so many levels, and of course the principal one is the significant loss of life that has occurred. And all of us at any level of government should be focused on doing what we can to prevent the spread of this illness. obviously provide medical countermeasures when they are appropriate, and to learn from, look, this is a brand new virus. No one ever heard of this before January of this year. So every week that goes by, more information is gathered about the biologic behavior of this virus. And we need to disseminate and share that information and learn from what's happened in other areas. So I am grateful that Governor Abbott in Texas is paying attention and that he's doing what I consider to be the right things on the ground. Again, when you start to open up your society, you are going to get more cases. The key is you don't want to get a significant number of cases, and you do want to protect those people that are in particularly vulnerable situations who have no other choice about where to go.
Congressman, the last minute we have, I promise to get back to Dr. Fauci. About an hour from now, we're going to hear from him live in your committee. He's gotten some things right. He's gotten some big things wrong. What do you want to press Dr. Fauci about?
Well, I guess we're all interested in hearing about where we are with the medical countermeasures, particularly the vaccine. Dr. Fauci, and as far as vaccine development, has been the person who's been on the front lines of Ebola, of Zika, of all of the medical countermeasures. He's got just a fund of knowledge that is that no one else can compare to it. So we're all anxious to be able to get him in the committee and to be able to explore a little bit about what he's done and what he's thinking. Look, nobody got this 100% right in no country. I mean, it's a fallacy to think that you could, in early January, be able to predict and look over the horizon and see exactly what's going to happen with this. Exactly. No one could have done that.
Right, which is why, pardon me, sir, we've got to figure out how we move forward. We're running out of time. We appreciate your time.
The vaccine is the key.
The vaccine is the key. And we'll see you live in about an hour. Thank you, Congressman.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.